Hello and welcome to another winter weather update from NeoWeather. I am Mark Spencer, and I'm sure by now you've heard of a big snowstorm coming up for this weekend, the 18th through the 20th. We've had a few inquiries about it as well, and there's plenty of hype out there right now. Everybody's so eager to want to call that next system days in advance, so they have bragging rights. Well, we don't care about the bragging rights too much, to be honest, and we don't typically hype things. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at a few different models here and just kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at, what we're watching right now, and just to kind of show you some of the variability in each of the models and why this forecast at this point in time is still a little bit difficult, and it's just a little difficult to kind of pinpoint exactly what to expect at this point. Now, this will all start coming into better view here in about the next day and a half to 2 days at the most. All these are going to run pretty much from Friday morning through Monday night, and that's just to capture this whole system. Some of that changes a little bit, but on the timing. But overall, we're going to look at the whole weekend. So here's our system early Friday morning across parts of Texas and also New Mexico, and it's going to quickly come together as you put it into motion. Low is going to come out of Colorado here and really get this thing going. Plenty of snow, some freezing rain, and moderate rain across the Ohio Valley. Snow up into parts of Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, all of the Northeast. Then we're going to see the lake effect behind it really start to kick in off really all the lakes. And maybe even this model only shows it a little clipper coming across parts of the Midwest. Not sold on that, but the lake effect snow will definitely happen. We'll have a Lake Huron connection that will affect parts of far northeastern Ohio, northwest Pennsylvania, and western New York. And then, of course, with a northerly wind, Lake Michigan really gets going. And this model's a little aggressive. It's usually not with lake effect, showing a pretty potent band there, kind of hugging the Michigan shoreline. And that could really bring some heavy snow to South Bend, Indiana if that pans out. Also, with strong high pressure behind the system, will bring very cold air, and will also be moving east, and that will shut off the lake effect snow sometime on Tuesday from west to east. Well, how much snow does the GFS model say we're going to get? Well, we're going to see this theme across all three of these models. Heaviest snow is going to be across the northern parts of the United States, across parts of northern lower Michigan, and then on into Canada and the Northeast. What we're going to see that is going to change is this gradient and how fast that snow drops off the further south you go. This model really has about I-70 kind of being the cutoff for the most part from St. Louis to Pittsburgh, and then of course some pretty copious amounts of snow of lake effect there across the really all the southern shores there right now. But again, too soon on the lake effect snow for specifics. Really have to watch how things develop after that system moves through to get a really good idea, and we'll have a much better idea of that as that system approaches. All right, let's look at the European model. A little bit drier out ahead of it. We will still see some lake effect snow in spots. Should be pretty light. It'll be below freezing, that high pressure moving east. Now, I like this model a little bit better. I think it handles the overall package much better than the other two models we're looking at tonight. And as we put this into motion, we'll see that freezing rain across Kansas and parts of Iowa, and even northern Illinois. We'll lose most of it. Plenty of rain to snow. Now, this has warm air getting much further north. We'll switch to all snow behind it as it moves off to the east. And then, of course, there's that lake effect kicking in as well. Still a pretty good band coming across Lake Michigan as well. I think it's a little bit further inland than the other models, and plenty of cold air behind it as well. How much snow for this one? Well, here's our heavy snow. Really not different from the GFS. Even the amounts are similar. We're not going to worry too much about the amounts right now as the location, but look across the southern portion here. That gradient between almost no snow and a half foot or more is pretty tight. It's not a very wide area there. Look how much further north it is across parts of Indiana and the Michigan and Ohio. I mean, much of Ohio misses out on this one. Same with Indiana, but we're going to get more snow into the northern portions of Michigan and Wisconsin, and also back into Minnesota. And then you can kind of see the lake effect snow as well coming into play there too. So still a decent bit of snow in spots, but much further north because it gets the warmer air further north. We'll see that in a moment. Here's the Canadian model. I'm not a big fan of how this model is handling this system. I think it's very aggressive. It's been very aggressive with the lake effect and high pressure in place. I don't really buy this too much at all right now. But as we put this into motion, you're going to see all sorts of pretty colors kind of come up on the screen here. Heavy snow, heavy freezing rain, heavy rain, sleet. It's got everything moving across the Ohio Valley and then on off into the northeast with heavy snow and just everything. And then, of course, plenty of heavy lake effect behind it, because if you're going to go big, you don't want to go home, right? And now this is very interesting as we look here. It's not too often Chicago, Illinois gets lake effect snow off Lake Michigan. It's pretty rare. Everything has to come together just right. This is really darn close to impacting downtown Chicago. This is something I want to watch, and I want to see if other models develop. If that happens, that could be a significant lake effect snow event for Chicago, because if it hits there, it will really make an impact. But again, plenty of cold air in place. Well, now that we've looked at that, how much snow does it say we're going to get? Well, it has a further track to the south compared to the other two models, so that brings the heavier snow to the south. Not quite such a tight gradient on the cutoff on the southern end there, and that's bringing a half foot or more into the northern half of Ohio, Indiana, even Illinois, and we're looking at over a foot plus on this model across much of Michigan. And then, of course, we have the nice copious amounts of lake effect, where once you add that on, in spots you're looking at over 2 feet of snow. Now, this, I think, is way too aggressive. It's just model output. It's not a forecast per se. So I'm not really a big fan of this right now. It's got a much further southern track that I don't think is very realistic given the setup. We'll take a look at that in a moment. As far as the freezing rain, I think the European model's handling it the best. This is, I think, is also the best location for that given everything else. Southern Iowa, northern Missouri, and northwestern Illinois, probably the best chance to see freezing rain. And we're not going to worry about the amounts too much. It typically overdoes them at this range. You'll also see some freezing rain in the mountains across parts of West Virginia, and also into the mountains in central Pennsylvania, although that should all be fairly light. Now let's take a look at temperatures here. You're really going to like this. This system really varies in two different ways compared to last week's system. One, there's cold air out ahead of this system. Our last system had warm air out ahead of it. And two, the system's oriented differently compared to the last system, and that really supports a little bit better snow, and it's going to be a little bit more impactful system than last week. So we have the cold air out ahead of the system. As we put it into motion, you're going to see the system really start to grab this warm Gulf air and just skyrocket it northward. Here it goes, 40s and 50s across much of Ohio, even into the southern half of lower Michigan, and then we get the cold air behind it. And as that high pressure comes in into Monday night and early Tuesday morning, extremely brutally cold air across parts of Iowa and Wisconsin and Minnesota. We could be talking temperatures around -20 or so. Fortunately, winds really aren't going to be a big deal, so wind chills really won't be too much of a factor. But across the entire eastern half of the United States almost, you have temperatures below freezing, even down here into the Gulf Coast states, all the way down to the Gulf Shore. You're near or below freezing in spots. So this is a big pattern shift, too, with this system. And it's about 3 weeks later than we expected at this point, but we'll see how long the cold air will stick around. I think it's going to stick around through the end of January and into at least the first few days of February at this point. After that, it gets a little gray as to what happens, but there's really no blocking off to the east that we'd like to see that would really keep this cold air bottled up here. So I think we will probably see a bit of a moderating trend early into mid-February, but that's all subject to change in a hurry, and that's kind of been the theme this winter, unfortunately. All right, finally, let's look at the storm tracks. We looked at 3 models, and sure enough, we're going to have 3 different storm tracks. We got almost a west to east storm track on the GFS. It tracks this low across northern Iowa, southern Wisconsin, central Michigan, and then on off to the east, a little bit north of Buffalo there, and pretty much due east from Buffalo just about. The European model, on the other hand, brings a little bit further south. It'll track this across parts of Iowa and Missouri right along the state line there. And then it'll track up towards Chicago, across central Michigan towards Saginaw, and then kind of up to the east-northeast. It'll stay north of the U.S. border there for the second half of the weekend. If you take this track and move it about 300 miles east, it's a pretty similar track to last weekend's system. The overall pattern hasn't changed too much, so this is the track I'm favoring right now. Our the Canadian model's not handling this too well. It's, I think, too far south. and it's tracking from St. Louis towards Indianapolis, up towards Detroit, then it hangs a right towards Buffalo, and then it beelines to Boston. I think this is a bit of an anomaly. I'll say that this model will probably correct and go a bit more northeast later on, but I'm hoping that this track comes a little bit further north and it kind of gets its crazy antics down with all that crazy precipitation. I think that's way, way overdone. So if you see that floating around, you know where it came from. Well, we'll be working hard to keep you updated both before and during the storm. You'll see forecast products come out from us here within the next couple of days. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us.